Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And on this segment of the show, I have family law attorney Dominic Callins. Now, Dominic is currently a family law practice manager of the Attentive Law Group PLLC, and she's calling in all the way from Northern Virginia. Now then, Dominic has a wealth of experience in the area of family law and will be talking to you today about how to avoid an expensive divorce by focusing on the things that matter. So, if you're a divorcing couple, you might want to take a break, log out of Facebook, turn off Twitter, or any other kind of distraction and grab a notepad and pen and listen in to what Dominic has to share with you today. So with that said, let's not keep her waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Dominic.
Thank you, Stewart. I'm glad to be here.
You are so welcome, and we're happy to have you on the show. So let's just jump straight in then, Dominic. Can you briefly describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
So, Stewart, I help small business owners and entrepreneurs by providing legal advice during periods of family transition. Most commonly, that's in the context of divorce. People often come to me at the most emotionally vulnerable times in their lives, and I love working with people and encouraging them to focus on their family transition as a path to their next better chapter. It's so important to me that people come out feeling whole. However, because people come to me at such a vulnerable time, often their last consideration is the cost of the divorce process, and not so much the lawyer's hourly rate or the amount of the requested retainer. Sometimes they often focus too much on that aspect, but rather how the costs are accrued on a day-to-day occurrence in relation to their interactions with their attorneys and the strategic choices they make through the course of litigation.
Okay, so keeping in mind that anything you share with us today, Dominic, is not legal advice or legal assistance, briefly share one of the most common misconceptions that you come across while you're out there helping your clients, those entrepreneurs and business owners that you just described, on a day-to-day basis.
I want to talk to people about how to avoid an expensive divorce. And one of the most common misconceptions is that divorce is going to be expensive and I can't afford a good attorney. The thing that people should focus on when they're considering separation and divorce is not that it's going to be expensive and therefore I can't do it, but rather, what do I want at the end of this process? I think it's very important that people take the time not to focus on the reason why I'm getting a divorce, the fault basis, whether it's adultery or abandonment, or the motivation to stick it to, so to speak, their spouse, but rather, what do I want at the end of this? How do I want to feel? What do I want for my life? What do I want for my children's lives? And so with that in mind, some tips and some things to keep in mind is, number one, when you're selecting an attorney, does that attorney convey the same type of goals that you have? Do they communicate with you in a way that you find effective, that you understand? And most importantly, are they listening to what it is that you say that you want? Attorney-client relationships are some of the most intimate relationships that you will have in your life. So you probably want to be more selective when you're choosing your attorney than perhaps you were when you chose your spouse. Keep in mind that your divorce attorney's primary job is to navigate your legal minefield. So a good attorney is going to know that their expertise may not necessarily be taxes, financial planning, selling a home, or coordinating your visitation schedule. And a good, effective attorney is going to refer you to the professionals who can do that for you. You will often find that these professionals to whom they prefer you can be less expensive than having your lawyer handle those matters. And it allows your lawyer to focus on the legal issues in your case. And when that happens, that brings down the cost of the divorce process.
Based on what you just shared with us then, Dominic, and obviously keeping client confidentiality in mind, please share an example of how you've helped someone who came to you with those challenges that you've just described, or with that misconception, and what kind of transformational results you were able to gain for them.
Sure. So one of my most familiar cases, a situation, the details of which I handle quite frequently, involves a client who came to talk to me and felt overwhelmed and felt, notwithstanding the fact that we had a good connection, that she couldn't afford my services because she had 2 underwater mortgages. She had a husband who owned his own business that was maxed out on credit. And the result was it was also maxing out their personal credit, that they had 3 children to provide for, that she traveled related to her work and she depended on her husband's help, but that her husband had an affair that caused her to feel like she did not want her husband to be around her children. What I helped my client to do was to focus on not the affair, not the fault basis for this marriage, because by focusing on the affair, that leads to more expense because you're spending time talking to your attorney about how you're feeling, what they're doing with the paramour, things of that nature, but rather focusing on what she wanted her life to look like at the end of the process. When it came to the issues related to the affair, I referred her to a counselor. And I think a referral to talk to a counselor or a divorce coach about those issues at a lower rate means that you're not spending a lot of money with your attorney focused on what are really more emotional issues. When it came to custody of her 3 children, again, focusing away from the fact that she didn't want the children around their father because of the fact that he had an affair, we focused more on what the children's schedule looked like, how the father helped my client be able to take care of the children. And so how could we fashion a child custody and visitation schedule based on not whether or not her husband cheated on her, but rather what her needs were and what her children's needs were. And then referred her to a parenting coordinator who could help her finish that process, so that when she comes to me, she has a plan that we can move forward in court and implement. By referring my client to other professionals who could charge lower rates, whose expertise were in the particular fields that were the challenges for her, when my client came back to me, we could focus on strategy. We could focus on decisions about whether we wanted to opt for mediation or to go to court and try a custody case, and whether and how we could actually settle the money matters and the debt matters and the child custody and visitation schedule.
Okay, so today's topic is how to avoid an expensive divorce by focusing on the things that really matter. Now, with that in mind then, Dominic, and for those divorcing couples out there, especially those entrepreneurs and business owners you mentioned. What's the most common, and I'm sure there are many pitfalls out there, but what's the most common and unknown pitfall that you'd like them to be aware of today?
Probably the most common pitfall that people, and the most common misconception that people have, is that divorce ultimately means we have to go to court and we have to have a trial. Trials are very expensive, and part of the expense involves how time-consuming they are. Some of my average contested cases can last 1 to 2 years. Wow. Ways that we can avoid that long period of time and the expense that may be related to that is to focus on alternative dispute resolution options. Those include things like mediation, arbitration, what we call four-way settlement conferences that involve negotiations directly between the client and their attorneys, and other ways to effectively resolve the issues that are the real challenges in the case without having to take those issues to trial.
Okay, Dominic, you've shared a lot of great information so far in the short amount of time that we have together. I'd just like to ask you something more on a personal level. So if you could just imagine that it's let's say a Monday morning, and your alarm clock goes off. It's 5, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., whatever the time may be in your part of the world, and you have a full day ahead of speaking with and representing your clients. How does Dominic Callan feel on a morning like that?
I feel excited. I feel ready to move forward and to help my clients. That's the most important thing to me, helping them. And just like I advise my clients, I look at what the end goal is for my client and come back to determine how can I achieve that. Can we achieve my client's end goal by going to a mediator and having the parties negotiate with the use of a third party to come to a place of commonality so that we can resolve the ultimate issue that's involved? I care about each and every one of my clients. It means they personally have an impact on me. I personally have an impact on them by virtue of how our relationship got started. But it gets me excited in the morning when I can think about how to help people move forward and have better lives.
One certainly gets a sense of your passion for what you do. So on that note then, Dominic, if we could just briefly expand on the topic of you. So for the listeners out there, I'm sure they want to know just a little bit more about Dominic Callan and a little bit more about your background and your education and the experience that you have as it relates to the topic of family law. So if you could just briefly share some of that information, that would be great. Thank you.
Well, I've been practicing family law in Northern Virginia for 10 years. The last 2 years, I have been practicing exclusively family law. Prior to this, I served as a judicial law clerk for the Henrico County Circuit Court and for the Honorable James W. Benton, who's currently retired, of the Court of Appeals of Virginia. I'm a former public school teacher. I am the daughter and sister of military veterans. I am a graduate of Florida A&M University and the College of William and Mary Marshall Wythe School of Law. I'd probably say that my proudest achievement, however, is that I'm the mother of an amazing 16-year-old son.
If you could, I'd just like you to just picture the kind of divorcing couples that walk in through your door, or they come to you for help and they're wanting to know more about avoiding expensive divorce by focusing on the things that really matter. Now, with that picture in mind, Dominic, what final thoughts would you like to leave before we move on to our final question?
Some things I would like people to keep in mind is that the amount of a lawyer's fees don't determine the quality of their representation. Expensive lawyers aren't necessarily the best. Just because your lawyer doesn't cost as much doesn't mean that they're not a quality attorney. You should focus on the relationship that you have with that attorney. However, keep in mind that your attorney cannot solve all of your problems. And a good attorney is going to talk to you about options for other professionals that will be able to help you with issues beyond the legal process, including referring you to an appropriate mental health care professional, tax professionals, financial planners, consumer debt attorneys, and the like. Keep in mind that your options for resolving your divorce matters go beyond trial. Mediation is a viable and helpful tool in the divorce process and other forms of settlement negotiations. Keep in mind that fault, such as adultery, cruelty, abandonment, while that can get you in the door in terms of the divorce process, allow you to file, that there's not as much significance associated with fault in this day and age as there has been in the past. Instead of focusing your attention and time on the fault reason for the divorce, focus on the end result. And when you can't stop thinking about the reasons for the divorce, get a hobby. Explore and reintroduce yourself to yourself so that you can have a different focus. Finally, keep in mind that fighting over your children because you want to win or because you want to control the other person is going to cost you a lot and not necessarily get you where you want to go for yourself or for your children. Evaluate your motives, evaluate your children's needs, and talk to the appropriate professionals about what may be the best schedule for you. Once you can get that picture in your mind, focusing on the things that actually matter, which is your life, then translate that into what it will look like in terms of income and asset distribution, the time with your children, what property you want to have, and what you can live without. And then that's what you talk to your attorney about. That's what you want her to do for you. And that is the price that you are willing to pay, the cost of your next better chapter. And that's how you're going to end up avoiding an expensive divorce.
Dominic, if there's somebody out there right now, one of those entrepreneurs or business owners, divorcing couples, whatever the case may be, and they're thinking, Dominic, I am ready. I want to know more. I want to know how to avoid the expensive divorce procedures that are out there. If that's the case, then Dominic, how can they connect with you? Where would they find you?
That's a great question. And the best place to find me is by contacting me. My telephone number is 703-447-8260. They can connect with me on LinkedIn. My profile is Dominique Callins.
This has been a great conversation, Dominic. I thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today. You certainly have demonstrated within the short period of time that we have that you're a true educator and advocate for your client's success. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome, Dominic. I really love your passion. One can feel it's coming from a genuine place. So we're honored to have you on the show today. And also, even more importantly, I'd like to say a big thank you to you, the listener. Whether you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, a divorcing couple, thank you for joining us on this very insightful and informative discussion with what I can only describe as one of the leading family law attorneys in Northern Virginia today. So make sure you do check her out. Her name is Dominique Callan. Give her a call, send her an email, connect with her on LinkedIn. Whatever you do, you'll certainly be in a good place to get started. So, with that said, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading divorce professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So, until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.